I'd like to introduce Chris Belasco. He's Senior Manager of Digital Services and Chief Data Officer for the City of Pittsburgh. So with that, I'd like to introduce Chris.
Thanks, Chip. Well, thanks everybody. I actually want to acknowledge Kaylee had actually accommodated a request that I made when we were starting to put together this panel, or this talk that has kind of a panel feel to it. And that was that we include members of our Community Data Justice Collaborative and Black Equity Coalition to help broaden the perspective of the work that we're doing. And she was really gracious and inclusive in helping to make sure that happens. So what I'd like to do, just briefly here, is introduce our team of speakers this morning, okay, afternoon, wherever it is. So you know about me, that's great. Up next in the middle is Phahsa, who works for, who runs a startup called Umi, and he runs the Umi economy. And then Shemariah Wagner, who is the managing director of the Black Equity Coalition, which is a local Pittsburgh organization that's intended to help sort of address some of the inequities that we find between different communities here in the city. And then she'll talk a little bit about the background of that. And on the end is Alex Payton, right, who is a member of the Data Justice Collaborative and also works at the Kingsley Association, which is just up the way on East Liberty Boulevard, and Frankstown, excuse me. Right, and so he and his partner are working on standing up an AI agent. So we've got a lot of really interesting technological capabilities sort of living within this Community Data Justice Collaborative, which I want to tell you about today. And so we titled our talk, Bringing Community to Data and Data to Community. And we're running a risk, right? We talked a lot yesterday about the technological acceleration, right? And the curve that we expect to see when our technology is accelerating faster than we're connected to communities. And so when technology outpaces that, whether we can kind of deliver services equitably and integrate technology equitably, we're going to risk a loss, right? Losing in the delivery of where and what public services we deliver. What businesses can serve communities, and what would happen is if that continues to occur with generations that could be left with gaps in systems that should have been built with people in mind. Right? And so we're thinking a lot about people at this conference, so this is a way to think about people, right, to make sure that we're including people. And so we're seeing these massive investments. We're seeing, compute go off the charts. We're seeing, open AI models that are as smart as me, I guess, right? And I love that, right? But if we're going to miss, right, that technology is this emergent technology, this emergent opportunity, we need to make sure that we're thinking about the community that we want to bring into the data work that we're doing. And so we know AI development will continue, and it's going to continue to require volumes of data from individuals and communities to continue to be better at what it does. Our digital infrastructure is going to become something we depend on more. Right? We're going to need it for more work that we do. We've been talking about agents and how agents are going to help us serve workflows, right? This is going to be, we're going to become more dependent on this work. And so cities like Pittsburgh, particularly cities that are really interested in engaging and integrating technology, need to be thought of as something to future-proof, right? That we want to make sure that we have resilience to respond to, even when we think about positive shocks, right? Shocks to communities, right? Like technology takeoffs. And so this is where we want to work to make sure that we're alleviating risk, and this is where the work is. So we started a project with the Black Equity Coalition called Data Justice for Pittsburgh's Black Neighborhoods. And so this is a partnership between the City of Pittsburgh and the Black Equity Coalition. And Shemariah is going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. Right? But what we want to do is help build decision-making power for Black Pittsburghers, people who haven't been included in technology decisions to this point. And so we have two different kind of branches of this project. One of them is called the Community Data Justice Collaborative, and we've got two collaborative members here to talk with you a little bit. And the second one is a direct, specific neighborhood focus called the Neighborhood Power Building Initiative. And that, we're taking that work, it's a separate project, happy to tell you about it offline, but we're doing work within the community of Larimer, right, just up the way, right, just by the Kingsley Association, to help build out a community health plan for the neighborhood, okay? And so these two projects kind of go side by side within Data Justice for Pittsburgh's Black neighborhoods. So we're gonna think about this, right? So you all know that cities have community participation. Community groups have been working with city governments like the city of Pittsburgh forever. Very few have ever collaborated or participated in data governance. So what are we thinking about there? How the city collects, presents, and shares data. This is not really often thought of as a space where communities are invited to participate. We'll actually talk about a few of those examples here in just a second. A few of the other leaders in this space. But we think that this is an innovation, right? Because we don't see it elsewhere. We talk to other cities, and we've been working with them for some time. So I'm going to turn it over real quick. We're going to come up for this, but we're going to give Shemariah a chance to talk about our partnership. Shemariah?
Thank you. So I don't mess this up. I'm hitting the down button.
I get it right.
Yeah, and you'll have to excuse me. I have like seeing glasses, and then I have like reading glasses, and my seeing glasses like flew somewhere in the car, so I don't have them. So anyway, to talk a little bit about our structure, it's a very unique partnership. The Black Equity Coalition is actually underneath the Poise Foundation. We are not an established 501c3 foundation. So the Poise Foundation, I don't know if you all are aware of the Poise Foundation or not. It's one of the oldest Black-led foundations in the country, actually. So they're located downtown here in 2 Gateway Center. They are our fiscal sponsor. So we are out of their offices. And then underneath the Black Equity Coalition, we have different working groups. We have 7 that have been identified right now. The Data Justice Working Group, I would say, is our most vibrant and effective working group that we have at this time. So the Data Justice Working Group sits right underneath the Black Equity Coalition. It is a project of the Black Equity Coalition. And then within the Data Justice Working Group, and then we have the City of Pittsburgh, and we have, they're like our partner, our strategic partner with the Data Justice Working Group and in the MADE grant that this initiative, the CDJC, is underneath. And then within the Data Justice Working Group, we have, it's probably about 15, 16 members that have been there consistently, and they are different subcontractors that are subcontractors to the project. And that's the list right here. We have members from Urbankind Institute, University of Pittsburgh, Create Lab, Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center, the Forbes Funds, and then we also do have some independent community consultants and epidemiologists that are through the University of Pittsburgh. In the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center, I would say, is one of our stronger partners in the initiative because they actually have data agreements with the City of Pittsburgh, which Chris will talk a little bit about. The thing that's unique about this partnership is that there's 3 other cities that are underneath this initiative through the de Beaumont Foundation, and Chris will talk about that. But it's interesting because our initiative, we were a lot further along than the rest of them because of the agreement that the University of Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center, and the City of Pittsburgh already have in place. So this, as Chris has said, is a very unique project here in Pittsburgh that we're working on. And then just a little bit about the Black Equity Coalition. The Black Equity Coalition was founded in 2020 as a response to the COVID outbreak and the lack of response that the Black and Brown community was receiving from healthcare institutions. So a group of epidemiologists, doctors, scientists, health experts, foundation, corporations all came together to really pull the data on the COVID epidemic and how it's impacting Black and brown communities because there was none, and then worked very closely with Allegheny County and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to really analyze that data and show that the testing centers and vaccination locations were not being centered in minority communities and how that was negatively impacting the health of our communities as it pertains to COVID, and was able to do some really great work around that. So from that, fast forward, we're post-COVID per se, but we still focus on the social determinants of health and inequities in the Black community within the Western Pennsylvania region, and still do some work throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We received a grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for over $7 million to provide COVID and vaccination, education, and training throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we also, in addition to this MAID grant, which is more focused on data justice, we have a community engagement and vaccination side. We are a REACH partner through the CDC, providing vaccinations to targeted communities throughout the city of Pittsburgh and Mon Valley. And then we also have a couple grants through the University of Pittsburgh where we provide long COVID education and training, as well as we are working with PA United on a decarbonization effort with Allegheny County Housing Authority, the city of Pittsburgh, and the county in general, to try to make their public housing communities more economically effective and safer places to live. And in addition, we have a couple other grants that we do with our educational institutions here. So we do a lot of work in the communities surrounding Black and brown individuals to try to make their living situations a lot better through focusing on the social determinants of health, of which one is the data, and how we affect the data systems and utilize data to try to make an argument for increasing the lived experience of these individuals throughout our communities. And then next we have, who do we have next? Chris, you're back.
And so we mentioned that this is unique, that there's there are other leaders in this space that we have looked to when we have been doing this work. Several of them are listed here, and they were awarded funding from the de Beaumont Foundation, which is a public health funding organization. And so when we say we're an awardee, right, all of the money actually goes to the community organizations, which is really exciting. And we are actually participating alongside 3 other communities, right? So we can see that Portland and Multnomah County, the Tucson Indian Center in Tucson, Arizona, and Baltimore, the Baltimore City Youth Data Hub are other areas where this work is happening with communities participating in data governance. So the grant is called MAID for Health Justice. MAID stands for Modernized Anti-Racist Data Ecosystems. And that's a lot of jargon, right? But this is how we're bringing that to life. And when we talk about the CJDC, what we're doing is we're trying to bring that to life with community. And so we're bringing together a group of residents with a variety of identities and backgrounds, experiences, eager to learn, and engage in conversations about how the city collects and uses data and technology. And so the Black Equity Coalition engages the collaborative members and the city data stewards. We have data stewards for each of our departments in participatory activities last Thursday of every month, so just this past Thursday, designed to spark conversation and deliberation. And in fact, last week we talked about stigma, territorial stigma, and how we present data back to communities, and how some data presented back to communities can show the absence of power, right? When communities certainly have ways of representing themselves that would show the presence of power, right? And so, we might think of, homicides and, depicting something in a way that would, reveal trauma to a neighborhood if we were to show it back in certain ways, and trying to be sensitive to those things when we produce data visualizations. And so what we're getting as a city in this partnership is phenomenal, right? So our CJDC members give their time to us to serve as an ambassador to the communities that they're a part of, to solicit input, advice, feedback from larger groups. And so this is what we've done, is we've integrated this work into the city's data governance work, which I'll tell you about just briefly in just a second. And so we want to make sure that the CJDC has meaningful participation within city data governance. Data governance for a city looks a lot different, right? We write policy, just like we talked about yesterday in the shared responsibility model talk. We're still in the process of writing a lot of those policies, playing catch up and trying to deliver, what we say should go for city employees. Privacy, data disaggregation, algorithms / sort of AI, right? And so we're working on reviewing and updating those policies. We're also bringing the CJDC into data products, a jargony term, of course, but for data visualizations and things that we make available to the public. And open data requests, right? So we have an ordinance to publish open data. We are required to publish open data and make information about the data that we publish available. That's exciting, but it's also a lot of responsibility. But the channels that people have to make those conversations happen are pretty limited. Working with community organizations helps to broaden that. And so what we're trying to do is build trust and create feedback to create sort of social license, think of permission, right, and acceptance on how data is accessed and used. Right? And so think of that as like the concept of a social license for data. Right? And so that lives with accountability, feedback, and conversation about how we're using data. And so we define data justice as a framework to address the harmful impacts of the way that data has been used. It emphasizes valuing community voices, knowledge, and experience with the other types of data that we're using. And it gives communities power to decide what gets counted, what is collected, how data is used, how data is shared or chosen not to be shared, and who tells the story. How do we align our values with the values of the community? And so through that work, the city has a set of practices already, one of which I mentioned, our open data ordinance. In 2015, the city and Allegheny County established an incredible partnership. There are so few of these across the country. There's one in Kansas City. I think there's another one where we have a separate organization that makes our data open at the Western PA Regional Data Center at the University of Pittsburgh. So they have a data catalog, and you can go there to data.wprdc.org and download all kinds of open data from the county and the city. And so we go to our source systems, we bring the data into our warehouse, we make it available in a bucket, they go overnight, they bring it in, and they update it. We have 122 data sets up there now. Not all of them are fresh. This is a really unique situation. We think of them as an open data trust, right? So we trust them and the community trusts them too. And so there's very few data intermediaries like this, and we are living out this open data ordinance from 2014 by making our data open in this partnership. Our data governance, this partnership requires us to have data governance. To be able to make data open, to be able to live out the requirements of the ordinance, we established a data governance committee at the city. And we have a long mission, accounting for our data sets, which helps us to produce a data catalog that we are required to do. We're still somewhere in the middle of. Guarantee that we have high quality data that we're making available. And I want to highlight here, important to this and our conversation, is establish this data-centric culture around decision-making and empower our stakeholders, which do not include simply the City of Pittsburgh employees, but as we make data open, others, right, to use data creatively and effectively, and to ensure that we're not infringing upon privacy and try to maintain accountable and bias-free utilization of algorithms. We have a strategy that we're doing written the Black Equity Coalition and the Community Data Justice Collaborative into it. I'm not going to read the whole strategy for you. There's 6 pillars: governance, governance, quality, capacity, empowerment, use, and equity. And these are infused with deliverables that relate to the work that we're doing with the Community Data Justice Collaborative. We're going to be working on updating data policy, right? We're going to be working on making data available and improving the channels through which people can access data so that they can use it. So these live within our pillars, and we align this work to the objectives of Mayor Gainey, who has a vision to provide a safe, welcoming, and sustainable environment where every individual and community is empowered to thrive to their fullest potential. And our goals are to ensure this meaningful participation with the CJDC, with data governance, particularly along those strategic themes we mentioned a second ago for governance, capacity, use, and equity. And so this is the logic of what we're doing. So if we're building a foundation of decisions made around data, then policy decisions will better reflect the needs of city residents. People who have not been involved in the process should have a place moving forward. This will enhance the quality and efficiency of city services for residents, will establish channels for accountability from both the community and the core team, and will bring changes informed by the work that we do, the learning that we do, and bring it back and adopt it into the work that we're doing. And so when we do that work, our work gets better, and we integrate the community to alleviate the risks or minimize the risks that we were talking about earlier. And so I'd actually like to turn it over to Phahsa here to talk a little bit about what we'd like our data community to look like.
Hold on, some logistics.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Phahsa. Really just grateful for this project, to be honest with you. I think this is extremely important. I want to ground us in when we're thinking about community, if you don't mind. If you were to Google right now that data is the new oil, you would see a lot of different things come up verifying and validating just how important it is to the civic infrastructure that we have. But oil is a natural resource, and a resource has a source, and what is the source of the data? We're talking about community. We've never built that infrastructure before. So that's what makes this such an important project, is that we're not just talking about Black and brown folks, we're talking about humanity as we race forward with all of this innovation. And so what does that community of the future look like, and how are we thinking about, I need to actually, because I didn't memorize these slides real quick, but adaptability. You have to have so progress belongs to those who evolve, transforming challenges into opportunities for meaningful and sustainable innovation. If it's not adaptable, imagine having oil and it could only be used for one thing. Oil is everywhere. Energy is used for all kinds of different things. We need to make sure that the community is adaptable. The collaboration, again, it's not just one group of people that we're talking about here. This is all of humanity. So bringing together thought leaders, subject matter experts and their networks, ensuring Black entrepreneurs, community members, and organizations are at the core while including aligned contributors. That's a great thing. So again, Phahsa, one of the entities that I'm involved with is the UMI economy. We're already in collaboration with the Forbes funds, and early last year we did our Intro to Data Sovereignty workshop series. When I say data sovereignty, it's not about, it's sort of like what Chris is saying. It's the community, humanity, people present so much power in the future, and we don't want to just have an extractive relationship with that. So when we start thinking about the education that's necessary for us to have a better relationship with our data, we did an Intro to Data Sovereignty workshop series where we brought experts from the private side, experts from the public side to start bridging this digital divide where we could start having a better understanding about what our data looks like from the perspective of humanity. We even have so we took an anthropological approach to technology from the very start, which is unique as well. Inclusivity, listening to what communities have to say and identifying new and useful forms of governance around the data they produce. Inclusivity, we think this is, again, just a brown and Black and everybody coming together based on race, but it's really like the social and the economic sides of what data has to offer and what data can be for infrastructure as we're building things out here. That's extremely important. So we're talking about the nonprofits and the organizations that work with the actual community and have been doing so for decades. They have an understanding about what the community's needs are, what our long-term goals and needs are going to be, and aligning that with the private sector that's sort of, racing along because you need profits. We need that collaboration to take place. We need that adaptability to take place, and you can only do that in an inclusive ecosystem. And what we'll find is visibility, which is improved visibility into what community needs leads to more efficient forms of community engagement. Visibility. I can assure you that most of the private sector doesn't really see the community. If they did, then there probably wouldn't be as many issues and problems, but that's not an indictment. It's actually an opportunity to have more visibility into the community's needs and how can technology be used to create a better lens from a perspective that has a bias mitigated approach to it, where we're looking at things from the perspective of the community itself, sort of like what Chris was saying. Also, a shout out to Black Equity Coalition and these other organizations. This is such a powerful project. I hope you all are engaged because we're excited to be doing this. I think, let me hit the next slide. So why the community? Cultural insights enriches how data is interpreted, ensuring it reflects lived experiences and local nuances. Nuance, context, an extremely important thing if we're talking about getting around the bias that we know that AI can't get around itself. It's not a living thing. There's so much dynamism to the human condition, so much. The inclusive collaboration fosters innovation, strengthening the bridge between technology, policy, and real-world application. Me personally, I'm about utility when it comes down to tech. If it's not helping people, if it's not doing something that's going to be manageable, useful, meaningful, like it's not improving the life of these kids, I'm talking about all kids, then that's my bias. But I do think that that's an important thing, that we're thinking about the real-world applications and the policy that we're going to need to be looking at if we're talking about ethics and the community being along with their data. Sustainable progress requires community-driven input to prevent one-dimensional growth and ensure dynamic, adaptable development. One-dimensional growth, we should all be afraid of that. 360-degree context should be what we're striving for, and you need a human-in-loop system. We need people to be involved if that's going to be something that takes place. So when you start thinking about sustainable progress and sustainable development goals, these are extremely valuable pieces as well. Diverse perspectives, creating healthier data ecosystems where continuous feedback loops enhance both public and private sector initiatives. It doesn't just benefit the community. To Chris's point, the first thing he led off with was, this hurts everybody. So even the private sector that depends on data to be able to personalize the real-world applications that they hope is going to reach the mission, like their target audience, whoever the customer, the client, whatever it is they're trying to reach, you're going to want a feedback loop that's regenerative in order to be able to do that. Or else you have to pay for it. And you're paying for results that might not be the best results. It's as opposed to being able to have a collaborative relationship with the community so that you can actually, that partnership with the community is an extremely valuable thing. And that's why Pittsburgh is at the forefront of what this opportunity actually is. I think that's tremendous. I think that's valuable. And I'm gonna shut up really quick and actually introduce somebody that's been on the ground doing this work with one of the organizations in the Black community. That's Alex Payton. Get Alex.
Thank you, everyone. So I get the easiest slide. I just get to talk about how excited I was to be a part of this initiative. I have a personal love-hate relationship with the government, so the opportunity to be a part of the processes in which the government does what it does is like, yeah, why not, right? Which, honestly, I was like, as we're even describing the slides on the screen right here, a lot of this feels like the early keynote where they're talking about balancing on the moon, because there's a lot of perspectives in the room. There's a lot of, and anyone who's been to a community meeting has heard that. At the Kingsley Association, we host community meetings while also getting cussed out about the pool not being open. So we figure out how to optimize the information that's coming on. So we deal with it as an organization that utilizes city data in regards to what programs and what's the particular needs of the community. We utilize it from the standpoint of inputting that data so we could be able to explain what's happening, but being able to be a part of a process that actually says, hey, I'm able to be in a room with the optimization warriors, the equity warriors, everyone in that room, and being able to hear those perspectives that we don't get to sometimes have the capacity to hear is just a great opportunity in its own, let alone to be able to build and shape policy and the data tools and speak about visualizations and things that we need to consider, from accessibility, because we deal with, like I said, a teen who's on VR and a senior who doesn't know how to turn on their laptop. So like the wide range of usages and how to exactly make sure that data is accessible, and also to the level of what is data, you know. So it's a great opportunity to be a part of this community justice collaborative, and you know, we'll continue to see what happens from here.
Thank you.
So thank you, Alex. And again, the last piece here that I'll be speaking on is just the long-term ROI, because what is the value? If it's going to be a short-term hit, then you know it's not necessarily something that we're talking about sustainability. It's not sustainable. So leading the growing ethical tech sector for smart cities, for this emerging data-driven economy, is still in its nascent stages, and communities as well as nonprofit and for-profit stakeholders are both needed in this to progress. So like we said, collaboration is necessary. And if you're talking about, like what Chris said, we're leading the way. Pittsburgh doesn't have the opportunity to do that in a lot of things. We're not winning a Super Bowl this year either, potentially, but the opportunity to be leading what's going on in technology, not just in creating the most advanced tech, but the most ethical tech, means that other cities are going to want to jump on board as well, which makes it a tremendous opportunity to be, you know, whether it's licensing. I mean, there's all kinds of great things. You all know how to make money. I'm sure you can see draw the lines to the right dots. New collaborative models piloted by first mover cities such as Pittsburgh will help to create and co-create these best practices and standards, allowing them to support other cities, helping them to, and I just said that. So that's an important part of this project, is being able to let it be an ongoing thing that is, you know, that we're driving, we're leading the way, and that the CDJC is a part of, you know, introducing the community component of what this is. And I think there's something like this could be involved in every city. I think there's a community with data that they could be producing that's contextually rich, culturally rich, that can support the civic infrastructure development that we hope is going to be future-proof moving into the future. That's it for me, but Chris, thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Phahsa, and thank you, Alex. And so we'll wrap with some next steps. We actually even prepped a couple of discussion questions if you don't have questions for us that we'd like to think around together. So we're really at the beginning of this. We started meeting in January. We kicked off in November last year. We just had our third meeting last Thursday. I mentioned it to you, right? And so what we're starting with is to build the cohesion among our Community Data Justice Collaborative. And in fact, I'm going to lead to the final objective of this is to grow this into a community data advisory board for the city. Right now, you can see it's kind of a partner with the city. We want to incorporate it over time. Every member of the CJDC is a city resident, and that's by design, because as we grow, we hope to incorporate this just like a board and commission. Now I've cut to the chase. I want to talk a little bit about what we'll be doing in the meantime, right? So this summer, we're working with a public health nonprofit called Public Health Informatics Institute. They're modeling our business processes to make sure that we can build a smoother and broader open data request process. So that's one job we're doing this right now, but also through the summer. As we go towards these topics together, make sure everybody gets to the same page, we're going to be soliciting these recommendations from the CJDC on our data governance policies related to algorithms, data privacy, data disaggregation. Our conversation last Thursday, had people in the room going, when do we start working on a style guide? That means it was a good conversation. That means people are ready to do work. That's exciting. So that's one of the things that we're going to do is say, here's what we should produce, and here's how we should present when we do it. And like I said, this is synergistic work. We're drawing on the expertise of some people who want to contribute their time to it. And so that's really exciting and very much appreciative. So I want to thank every member of the presenting panel here when they came today. And if you wouldn't mind pausing and thanking them too for contributing to making the city a better place.